Chapter 11. The next few weeks settled into a pleasant though strenuous routine as the well-oiled military machine swung into action as the upcoming expedition was planned and prepared for. 2 days after the meeting, the heavily laden supply wagons, drawn by the hugely powerful dray horses with their gentle, patient faces, and their hooves obscured by charming feathers of hair, set off. With them went the camp staff and their accompanying security details, who would obviously also help with the setting up of the camp, of mounted militia and lounds and their handlers and horses. The experienced campaigner and the best organizer I know, as the Queen described him, Councillor Padham went along to oversee all the details of preparing End Village for the expeditionary force. Fitness training started the very day after the meeting. At Major Tarek's invitation, Leonard went along on the second training session of the lounds and their mounted handlers. They rode down through the training park below the barracks and palace, and then out of the city by the regimental gate that was used only by the Lound Regiment, onto a series of back roads that were ideal for their training purposes. In their quarters later that afternoon, just prior to the eventide meal, Leonard reported to Anmar that Zand and Shadow set a pace that the others found hard to keep up with. Zand in particular had made it embarrassingly clear that he was not really exerting himself. On the way back, about 2 parsecs from home, when everybody else was dragging along, he had simply taken off and soon raced out of sight. And it was all I could do to stop Shadow from taking off after the scoundrel, Leonard complained, trying hard to sound disapproving, but obviously finding it difficult to hide his pride in his superb animals. And to make it worse, Leonard concluded, now laughing openly, when we got back, there he was, playing an energetic game in the courtyard with a whole bunch of juveniles, and he didn't even have the grace to look vaguely tired. Anmar joined in the laughter as Zand, prone on the carpet, sent a sly, "Now, you would not want me to be dishonest and pretend, would you, Leonard?" And exactly 4 days after the meeting, Zendra had her puppies. She woke Anmar with an insistent mind nudge early in the morning, and indicated clearly that they should go to the birthing room in the Lound barracks. After Anmar had accompanied her to the barracks and seen her comfortably settled on a soft cotton birthing mat over a thick layer of straw, she hurriedly went in search of the surgeon. Lound Surgeon Dell had told Anmar that she was expecting the arrival of Zendra's pups any day, and requested her to make sure that she attended Zendra herself. Fortunately, Anmar found the surgeon up and dressed already, because she was starting to feel very fraught on Zendra's behalf. Surgeon Dell tried to reassure her. "Do not fret, Anmar. Zendra's condition has greatly improved over the past week. Though she is still a bit thinner than I would like, she is healthy, with a strong, steady heartbeat. And thanks to you, she has unmistakably regained her will to live. I am sure she is going to be fine, and her pups seem fine too. I heard 2 vigorous little hearts thumping away when I examined her yesterday morning. So try and relax. After all, she is the expected mother, not you." The last was said with a gently teasing smile as she put a calming arm around Anmar's shoulders. And Lound Surgeon Enar Dell proved to be entirely correct. Zendra's 2 surprisingly large and vigorous pups, 1 male and 1 female, were born easily and quickly. "No wonder Zendra got so thin," the surgeon remarked cheerfully. "These greedy little beasties have really been draining her resources." She settled the blind, squirming little bundles next to Zendra, who immediately licked them clean and started them suckling. The surgeon mixed 2 large spoonfuls of a yellowish powder into a bowl of warm water, and knelt down so that Zendra could lap it up. "This is an excellent tonic that we give to all our Lound mothers for at least a week after their pups have been born. It supplies them with a large variety of nutrients, and rebuilds their bones and their strength very quickly, and it also helps them make lots of good rich milk for the little ones." Surgeon Dell smiled at Anmar as she took off her smock and washed her hands, ready to leave. "See, that wasn't so bad, was it?" Anmar nodded bravely, but nonetheless looked utterly exhausted where she knelt at the head of Zendra's pallet. "We will just let Zendra rest for an hour or 2. Then we will move her and her babies to a nursing cubicle where they can stay until after the puppies are weaned." Anmar managed to restrain herself until the surgeon had left, before she put her arms around the Lound and cried all over Zendra's patient head. "Zendra is fine. Anmar must not fret," the Lound reassured her. Anmar needed telling more than once before she finally took the Lound's word and allowed herself to relax a little. The rest of the moon of Remus was a busy time. Anmar and Nightwind joined in the Lound training sessions, though she and Zendra had not yet made a formal decision to join the Lound regiment. After a fairly skittish start, Nightwind settled down well, particularly after Leonard and Shadow also regularly started attending the exercises. Nightwind easily held her own with the other horses, and soon accepted the presence of the other Lounds. Leonard and Shadow, as well as Zand, made a point of keeping close to her, especially at the beginning. All the handlers were excellent horsemen and women. Nellen Tarek in particular made an arresting sight on her big glossy chestnut mare, Flame, that she seemed to become part of when she rode. Zendra could obviously not join in the training yet, so Anmar temporarily teamed up with another Lound to learn the proper protocol and methodology regarding the interaction between Lounds and their handlers, especially under field conditions. Zand was consistently on his best behavior, though he retained his habit of racing for home at the end of the exercise. After a while, one of the other Lounds, a powerful young male named Tano, joined him, soon to be followed by more Lounds. As a laughing Nellen Tarek put it, "That energetic beast of yours, Captain, is going to get this lot fitter than they have ever been. They'll soon start catching up with him." But none of them ever did. Invariably, when they were about to draw level with him, Zand would simply increase his pace and move inexorably away from them again. Halfway through the moon, Queen Eruda started joining them quite frequently on her fiery, full-blooded Itabrian desert thoroughbred, Tempest. He stood almost 16 hands high, and was the deep black colour and gloss of burnished inkberry lacquer. For the first time ever, Leonard felt that Shadow might have serious competition. Finally, the Queen's 2 burly sergeants from her personal guards, Menlock and Narik, and their Lounds also joined the training sessions. Quite often, some of the other handlers in their Lounds also participated in the training, just to stay up to the mark, as one of them put it. One evening, a young aide of the Queen's approached Leonard, Anmar, and Dane in the refectory, and requested that they all attend an audience with the Queen after the eventide meal. He specifically requested that Zand should come along as well. The Queen herself let them into her audience chamber and led them to the comfortable seating area off to the side. After she had activated the shields, she sat down next to Leonard on one of the couches. She indicated to Dane and Anmar to move closer, so they seated themselves in chairs positioned on either side of the couch, with Anmar next to Leonard and Dane on the right-hand side of the Queen. Queen Eruda gestured to Zand to come and stand in front of her and Leonard. She briefly stroked the Lound's back, then said to Leonard, "I think the time has come for you to start developing your space-bending abilities." As Leonard gasped and immediately tensed up, the Queen spoke in a soothing but nonetheless grave tone of voice. "Try to relax, Leonard, but it is good that you do not take this lightly. As I said before, a space-bender is the most dangerous telepath there is. Abuse of this power can be very harmful and have disastrous consequences. Anmar, I wanted you and Dane to be here as well, so that you will be able to recognize what happens when it does. As a sensitive, you may find it rather disturbing, so try to hold on to Dane's mind signature to retain your mental equilibrium until you have become used to it somewhat." The Queen smiled at Dane. "But before we start, I first want to congratulate you, Dane. Colonel Malek tells me that your telepath and Lound training is going really well, and that you and Marox have already formed a strong bond and are working extremely well together." Dane's face lit up. "Yes, Your Highness, it is going well. I have never been happier in my life, and Marox is a lovely beast. But thank the benign presences that we belong to the Lound Regiment, and I am not responsible for buying his food. He may be a Lound, but he eats like a dray horse." The light-hearted laughter that Dane's remark evoked helped Leonard to relax. "Good, let us begin," the Queen continued. She lifted the jeweled timepiece that she habitually wore hanging around her neck over her head, and laid it on the small table between her and Dane. "You will note that it is now almost 15 minutes past the 20th hour. Please open your minds and just lean back comfortably and be at ease. Zand and I will start with a simple time manipulation, shall we, Zand? I shall lead and you follow as soon as you are ready." The Lound fixed his glowing eyes on the Queen, then became completely still. His affirming, "Yes, Your Highness," drifted as softly as a dust mote into mind space. And then nothing much happened. The quiet room seemed to get marginally quieter, and Anmar thought that her head suddenly felt rather heavy, but nothing else happened. After a few seconds, the Queen said, "Thank you, Zand." Leonard and the others looked at each other in some bafflement. The Queen picked up the timepiece from the table and held it out to the others. The hands indicated that almost an hour had passed. Utter disbelief spread over the faces of the 3 young people. Dane's mouth literally fell open. After a few incredulous moments, Leonard half rose to his feet and spluttered, "But Your Highness, nothing happened. We just sat here for a few seconds and absolutely nothing happened." The Queen shook her head and said gently, "No, Leonard. Zand and I made it seem as if nothing was happening. but as you can see, almost an hour has in actual fact passed. Leonard fell back into his seat and spoke with utter conviction. Not by all the gods, goddesses, and demigods known to us and the ancients am I ever going to be able to do something like that. Zand must be wrong about me being a spacebender. Again the Queen gave a gentle shake of the head. No, Leonard, I don't think so. You may remember that I said I had only ever encountered 2 spacebenders in my life before Zand. The one I spoke of was myself, of course, and the other one was in fact your grandfather. Though he was elderly at the time already, he was the one who guided me in the development of my space-bending abilities when I was still on the throne in Belfane. I remember him with great respect and affection. This time it was Leonard's mouth that fell open. So to get back to the possibility of you being a spacebender, I believe that there is every chance that you are. Besides, she added, slyly teasing, Zand says that you are, and we do not argue with Zand, do we? Zand blinked his fierce eyes at the Queen. Very wise, Your Highness, very wise. Leonard, still in a state of shock, could only manage a wan smile along with the other's laughter at the Lionhound's not-so-subtle effrontery. After this the Queen and Zand demonstrated the opposite of what they'd done before. Leonard, Anmar, and Dane sat spellbound as they felt time speeding up around them, and they experienced the passage of hours. When the Queen called a halt to the demonstration, they were utterly convinced that it was well past the midnight hour, yet the Queen's timepiece clearly indicated that barely a minute had elapsed, and that the 21st hour had not even been reached yet. This set the pattern for the rest of the moon of Remus and the first weeks of Morn. 2 or 3 times a week the Queen asked them to join her after the eventide hour, and gradually Leonard felt less intimidated by the very idea of space bending. One momentous evening, towards the end of the 2nd week in Morn, he felt his mind fall into step alongside the well-known and beloved mind of Zand, and the by now familiar mind of the Queen during a time acceleration exercise. As the Queen had predicted, when Leonard had become discouraged and despondent at what he saw as his failure to become a spacebender, it happened easily and almost with a sense of inevitability. Anmar and Dane later both reported a marked increase in the speed with which time seemed to rush past them as Leonard's mind joined those of Zand and the Queen. Afterwards the Queen was warmly congratulatory, and Zand rubbed his heavy head against Leonard's chest with a gratified, rumbling purr. Since then, Leonard had been able to join all the space-bending exercises that the Queen and Zand had engaged in. Only one space-bending exercise remained unexplored. The Queen had been unwilling to perform this last one as it was deeply disturbing to anybody exposed to it. She referred to it as the evocation of mind demons. Leonard was both anxious to explore it and simultaneously deeply reluctant to be exposed to it or become involved in it.